Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Australian IUCN for organizing this very important session. My name is, even though it's started with I, it's pronounced Isoa Korovulavula. Yes, that's my name. And I'm from the island of Kandavu in the Fiji Islands, the southern part of Fiji. And my mom hails from the western part of the bigger island, Vitilevu, in Tavo in Ba, the dry part of the big island. That's where my genetic makeup is from, basically, in a nutshell. I've been part of IUCN for a while, and I've been in and out. And one of the things that I would like to just highlight is that one of the first environmental non-government organization nationally based here in Fiji is PACHI, South Pacific Action Committee for Human Ecology Environment. That's where both Kelvin and Anna were part of the group volunteering for that particular organization. It was based at the University of South Pacific. This was back in 1992, as we have just got, I think the Earth Summit in Brazil was actually held in the same year. That's when we took off in terms of environmental awareness and campaigns in Fiji. Again, working with crop agencies, SPREP in particular, during those years. Basically, what I just to go straight in what I think is being a council member, and that is to highlight some of the key pressing issues that the 163.4 square kilometers of oceans, which the islands of the Pacific are part of, just looking at in terms of percentage, it's about 32% of the surface of our planet, which you can put all the continents together, in that particular ocean. So it's a huge, huge area. And the task for our council in helping the particularly the Pacific Island countries, for that matter, is not an easy task. We have, all these islands have indigenous people of various, I would say, ethnicity. You've got the Micronesians, you've got the Polynesians and Melanesians, and all have different languages as well as dialects. So in terms of communication and involving and engaging the Pacific Island community, for that matter, it's not straightforward. It actually, you have to look at the best strategy and networking that you can apply in actually getting their views, getting their opinions, and understanding where they are at the moment in terms of conservation, in terms of tackling the challenges of climate change impacts, and other important environmental issues that they may be experiencing. I mean, at the lens of this is actually another important aspect is the quest for improvement of basically socio-economic development in these countries. And this is one of the pressing challenges in terms of how they can trade off some of environment work with development, and likewise, where's the balance in terms of moving forward in the coming years? With the threats of climate change impacts, particularly in the smaller islands, the atolls, as well as the bigger islands, it's not going to be easy for them to really deal with these issues. Already, they've been experiencing some major challenges. Loss of important arable lands in some of the small islands, and more importantly, loss of where they can settle and where they can live. And in the next 20 years, as we come close to the Congress, this is going to be a key point that needs to be thought through very carefully amongst all the members of IUCN in how we, Pacific Island, can actually withstand and be resilient into this coming decade or even the next 20 years. One of the things I've been involved in recently is nature-based solutions, particularly on mangrove. We've been working with the I work for the University of South Pacific, Institute of Applied Science, and we've been working with the University of New South Wales. The project is called HELLO project, which is basically looking at better ways of restoring mangroves and also applying it in terms of how you can have floating mangroves. And these are some experimental work that we are currently working on. And this is quite important in terms of how you can actually relay some of the learnings from the various initiatives that has been applied across the region, which is very little information has been floated around and actually affects indigenous lives in that way. Most of the land areas as well as marine areas belong to the indigenous communities of the various islands, and how they can maintain it, how they can be more resilient come sea level rise as well as tropical cyclones, which is quite devastating in these areas. This is a challenge in itself. And again, what I'd just like to say, this is an ongoing issue that I think Pacific Island countries are voicing and echoing to the world, global world, and how they can be compensated accordingly. I'm not looking at just purely compensation in terms of how, as a council member, but I'm looking at how they can, whatever they've got, how they can be more resilient come the impacts of climate change. I asked some of the students, this is some of the things I've just tried recently, for them to answer me in this question: which of the two are you more in control of? Biodiversity conservation or climate change? And I was surprised that they shouted out climate change, which to me shows there's I would say a brainwashing in terms of everything that has been a problem now is related to climate change. But again, I mean, the focus of biodiversity conservation to me is critical at this time, because this is the only thing that Pacific Island countries are in control of, and particularly indigenous community, in terms of how they conserve some of the important habitats, whether it be marine or whether it be terrestrial, which will carry them forward in the next decade, even century, in terms of these impacts that they'll be gaining. Climate change, of course, the impacts we cannot do much about. We can develop adaptive approaches, but again, what we can in control of is how we can protect some of the existing important systems. And I think this is something, as a council member, is what I'm trying to promote in the government forums, in the regional forums, how biodiversity conservation can be a priority again in the light of climate change impacts. There's a lot of funds going around funding climate change, but there is a basic resource that most of the indigenous communities know, and they actually have cultural they've got cultural significance to their lives, and they know it, that the different kind of things that they surround them. They know what it is. They know how they evolve over time, and the important knowledge that they have, indigenous knowledge, and more importantly, the traditional ecological knowledge of these systems is critical enough for them to really be highlighted in most of the forums. It's been, I think it's been voiced and it's been discussed in some of the major regional meetings, for instance, it's the SPREP meetings, but I think that's not adequate when it comes to the national level. And this is, as a council member, I'll try to advocate that we need to go back to the roots, to where we belong in terms of indigenous communities in the Pacific. There is assistance coming from abroad, but it's more important that we are not totally relying on what comes, but rather what we have and what we can do about it. The other major issue that I see, the second one, is something that's quite huge, but actually there's a lot of discussion going on right now, and that is biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. And this is something that agreement about such huge area that most of these countries are part of, particularly in Oceania, is something that needs to be discussed not only at the national or regional, but even at the community level. What what are at stake in terms of their own livelihoods. I know one of these controversial issues that cropped up time and time again is deep sea mineral mining. That's something that I believe that even at the community level, people start to realize that there's some resources in the seabed that can be affected through development. And most of the marine resources is yet to be known because there's a lack of scientific studies being done in some of these ocean spaces. Again, we rely on philanthropists. And now we have the pristine seas. National Geographic just finished some of their work here in Fiji. And again, they'll be moving to other parts of Pacific, as well as the Wait Foundation. These are the only big philanthropists that actually have helped in terms of Pacific Island countries to know what's there under the ocean. Ocean, to me, is one of the key resources that needs to be discussed even further come the Congress this month. And it's going to be a critical issue because there's not only the biodiversity issue, there's also the geopolitical issues that surround it. And this is something that probably it's beyond IUCN mandate, but it needs to be realized that this actually would affect biodiversity conservation in most parts of the Pacific. Promoting, third one, promoting climate resilience is critical. I would actually advocate more how we can be more resilient to climate impacts, particularly looking at indigenous knowledge, look at the various rich indigenous knowledge that we have all across the various islands in the Pacific. Right now, there's a compendium has not been put together to understand the richness of some of this indigenous knowledge that can help us through the trying times ahead in terms of food security, in terms of even basically survival, and also in terms of medicinal properties that they may have in terms of helping us through the difficulties in terms of various kinds of vices that may affect our health. This is an important aspect. I would say that there's I think very little has been done to discuss in details what climate resilience is all about. What in terms of from a community level to national level and regional level. I think this is a critical aspect. There may be some work that's been done, but I think it's necessary that we look into this again. These are, to me, some of the priority areas that really need to be taken into consideration in respect of biodiversity conservation. And again, with Pacific, most of the islands are just in the oceans, this big Pacific Ocean. Enhancing marine coastal management is important, and looking at what's the best facility that can continue to finance and how they can actually maintain their finance internally. We have problems in actually projects that have been run right across the region, and I've seen this and I've witnessed this, that it has come to an end, and there's nothing more that can be done after that. Again, is this the best way in order to help the Pacific, the Oceania areas in terms of those kind of initiatives where project is a time frame? And what's next? There's another, so it's like a new colonial experience that some of the Pacific Island countries get in terms of survival in the Pacific with all the various things happening. And they rely on funding to come from abroad. I think mentality needs to change. What's the strength? What we have that can bring us through, rather than continue relying on outside funding. It is amazing the footprint of the various what I call bingos, the big international NGOs have here in the Pacific. In Fiji, we have all the huge, I would say, conservation NGOs that are part of working in the Pacific. It's great. How can they help in actually sustain some of this work with strengthening the community at the community level. And this is what I'm trying to advocate, because it's critical that this needs to be sustained at a certain level. And to me, the certain level they're talking about is it's a grassroots level. Nationally, I think government can discuss a lot of things in terms of various big regional meetings and international meetings, but it is the day-to-day life of each individual in most of these communities, to me, is my objective in looking at it, that they actually benefit from any work that IUCN will be doing in the future, that it actually boils down to at that level. And to me, that's something, those are I would say the 4 areas that I really want to focus on. If I'm actually part of this important council committee, it's going to be a challenge. I know it's not easy, but I guess it is something that can be done if it's done in a way that you've got proper strategies to implement them. And I know that there's a Center of Excellence in the Pacific in terms of biodiversity, which is PREP. Again, how we can utilize that in terms of continuing forth with the KMGF already in place, and also to support the biodiversity through the, I would say, the nature positive approach, which IUCN has been very much applying in most of its work. Again, we need to relook at and reset the way we move forward with biodiversity conservation, given the lens that climate change has kind of taken over most of this in the mindset of people, which is important, but I guess people are forgetting what can help them to be more resilient in this kind of more global crisis that may happen in all the islands in the Pacific. With those words, I'd like to thank you again, and I'm looking forward for any questions or comments. And I'm really happy to be part of this webinar and just sharing my views as a council member, what are my real critical focus are. Thank you.